Just the other day, I was talking to a friend who was a caregiver for her husband, like I was. We remembered many of the areas of our caregiving lives and how complex the stressors were. And we agreed that we were challenged more by the unique situations that came up for us in caregiving than by anything associated with our previous careers. And I started thinking about the gap in information about caregiver stressors and how often caregiver stress is talked about just in terms that are usually used for employed workers. There are relatively few research studies that analyze actual in-depth data about the unique stressors that caregiving places on us emotionally, physically, and mentally, and what has been proven to help caregivers. And it's striking about how the studies that are available mostly end with a statement such as, more research into the effects on caregivers is needed. Or in one research article I recently read, caregivers have significant unmet needs, and these are often complex, multidimensional. Gaining a more detailed understanding of the needs and barriers will assist in the development of interventions that are tailored to the unique needs of caregivers. Well, the good news about this is the recognition of the need for more research. But I think it is fair to say that those of us working in the field regularly hear your stories, your experiences, and your journeys. And even in the midst of your unique situations, we hear themes and frequent common experiences that you bring forward. And when we listen closely, we come to understand the challenges, needs, and what helps caregivers experience growth and well-being rather than burnout and feelings of defeat. I'm Dr. Corabelle Arps. Today on the Caregivers Careport, we'll go beyond our growing understanding of burnout and compassion fatigue, which we addressed in our last episode, and explore how the complexities of life as a caregiver are many and they are significant. And we'll look at a proven strategy that's used in health coaching to help people make changes to improve the areas of their own lives that are stressful and jeopardizing their health. In the last episode, we took a deep look at burnout, its causes, its symptoms, and how we caregivers can deal with it and heal. Burnout is that debilitating condition that makes us feel depleted of energy, but not just that. It causes feelings of hopelessness and difficulties in dealing with work or carrying out our job effectively. It causes us to feel that our efforts make no difference. When we are burned out, we become cynical and detached. We also explored the nature and possible repercussions of caregiving, which can cause a condition that is called compassion fatigue, in which we lose our ability to empathize or feel compassion for others. Now, burnout is most often talked about in those in the workplace, with their job or place of employment being the major contributing stressor. But it certainly can be present in those working as family caregivers. And while compassion fatigue is usually applied to healthcare professionals or professionals in the helping fields who are constantly caring for the physical and emotional needs of others, family caregivers can also suffer from the loss of ability to feel empathy for others, which is what happens with compassion fatigue. But the workplace stressors that bring on burnout or compassion fatigue are not the whole story in the stressors that caregivers experience and in our understanding of the multidimensional landscape of family caregiving. I think the playing field of caregiving is much more complex than the usual workplaces that people experience because many caregivers face interlocking situations from many different areas of life, which most employed workers just do not usually face in terms of the numbers and depths of the stressors, the personal, emotional significance of their stressors, the personal losses, the financial costs, and the potential for discord and fractures to ripple through their families. You may have experienced a few or all of these difficulties, but I can honestly say that I have never talked with a caregiver who has taken an honest and thorough look at their caregiving journey who didn't speak of at least some of these at some stage of their caregiving. So let's look at some of the significant stressors that are often held in the more private depths of our hearts and minds. But I promise you that this episode is not going to be a big downer because after we look at our stressors, we'll get the good news of what we can do about them. The first really significant stressor I think that caregivers experience is personal grief and loss. Personal grief and loss. We may be grieving for a spouse, a parent, a child, a partner, or a longtime friend. We may be grieving that they have lost their health and we want better for them. We may be grieving because of losses we are experiencing now. Maybe we just don't want or aren't ready to lose them. We may be starting a prolonged grieving process for a loved one with dementia or a terminal illness. We may be mourning the loss of things we enjoyed in our pre-caregiving days with a parent or a spouse, back when we had their support, their presence, and the emotional and physical stability that they gave us. Maybe we've left a job we enjoyed to give care full time. Perhaps we've lost financial and social stability. Have there been dynamics in your family that are causing divisions or resentment about caregiving decisions and driving wedges between family members? All of these areas of life and the stressors that caregiving brings are really significant in people's lives and in the meaning of their lives. Caregiving and the reasons for its need can trigger deep-seated pain, sadness, fear, anger, loneliness, and frustration. Even for caregivers who do not particularly like or feel connected to the person they are caring for, they often express a keen sense of loss and resentment for losing pieces of their life that they did not want to let go of. And these emotions may be felt strongly at any given time of the day, no matter where one is. The grief and loss are like a pall that lies over all parts of life, and it colors and impacts how we think and feel about our lives, our safety, our relationships, and our future. Caregivers also have to deal with certain situations with loved ones which can be extremely difficult and alarming even. Think about the behavioral and psychological symptoms in a person who is receiving care, especially if they have dementia or another condition that affects their thinking and their behaviors. Caregivers having to deal with and manage a high frequency of behavioral and depressive symptoms experience significant stress. Handling behavioral issues such as combativeness and aggression, or other unsafe behaviors in their loved one is really tough mentally and physically, and the caregiver's physical safety may even be threatened. And caring for someone with depressive symptoms is also very stressful. It may lead the caregiver to experience strong feelings of guilt, self-blame, and inadequacy. And then, so let's talk about the feelings of guilt and self-blame. Oftentimes, caregivers think that they may be the only ones feeling guilty about giving care, but I find it is really commonplace in caregivers. The feelings of guilt and self-blame may arise from just feeling inadequate because they're unable to reverse the illness or end their loved one's suffering. The feelings chip away at the caregiver's confidence and shift their thinking to a self-critical dialogue, which becomes rather harsh at times, sometimes even cruel towards themselves. And it results in dejection and feeling incompetent. To make matters worse, self-efficacy, which is that feeling of confidence and that you know that you can handle a situation, has been shown in at least one study to really moderate the distress that caregivers feel when their loved one has behavioral and psychological symptoms. In other words, caregivers who have confidence in their ability to cope will feel less distress from those disruptive or aggressive behaviors. The next caregiving challenge that I frequently hear from caregivers and that I experienced myself when caring for my husband was living with and making sense of conflicting emotions and self-perceptions, which just don't really match reality. For example, the coexistence of emotions such as grief and relief. Maybe there's grief at losing, your loved one over time. But then there's also a relief a lot of the times when death finally occurs because their suffering is ended. So the very conflicting emotions. Maybe there's a feeling of generosity alongside resentment, of love in addition to anger. I'm sure that those of you who are caregivers have experienced this in some form or another, and it's part of the human condition because of the complexity of our lives and the complexity of our ability to feel emotions. That sometimes very conflicting emotions coexist. Often, caregivers also have to deal with difficulties in the ambiguity of their role and in family dynamics. Families have to sort out who the caregivers will be and what their roles will be. What authority will they have and who will make decisions? Where will they caregive and what supports will they be given? They may feel guilt or resentment if they perceive themselves as unsupported by other family members. They may worry about repercussions in their family relationships. This can lead to conflicts within the family as well as internal conflicts within the caregiver. The stress of navigating these dynamics can increase feelings of frustration and helplessness, potentially leading to severed relationships and further emotional stress and loss. Whether the family was suffering from long-standing conflicts and animosity, or though the difficulties develop because of caregiving, families can suffer the ill effects into the future and in multiple generations, even after the caregiving has ended. Many caregivers also have to deal with the financial consequences of their loved one's illness or disability, which can cause tremendous stress. And not all caregivers have equal access to resources and supports and options in how care will be delivered. So this can be a big stress and can also extend out into the family dynamics. And lastly, I want to talk about decision making. Oftentimes, the very person who the caregiver had relied on to be their partner in making major life decisions is now unable to partner with them because of their illness. The caregiver is now faced with the full responsibility of making the decisions on their own, and they are having to make choices not just about the situations, but about their loved ones' care options and their loved ones' life. This can be frightening, a pretty heavy burden, and lonely. So these are some of the situations and life areas that caregivers, face, which are in addition to what are usually the precipitating factors for burnout or compassion fatigue. And it's why I am glad to see more research explore caregiver challenges, their effects, and the preventative interventions and the cures for the mental, physical, and emotional effects of the stressors that caregivers experience. But for now, how can we not only keep our own health, our sanity, and our relationships, but actually become stronger, more confident, more empowered, more loving, and stay aligned with our values? So I would suggest first starting from a position of embracing compassionate self-awareness. First of all, to do that, we have to be aware of our suffering. That's a hard thing to do sometimes. Sometimes we would rather make a joke of things, or we would rather just bury them and not bring them up. But really, the first step is to be honest about what we are experiencing and how it's affecting us. If we're going to make a strategy of how we are going to feel better and behave in a way that we want, we have to see ourselves fully with the sensations, thoughts, and emotions that are driving us at the present time. We have to be in touch with our whole self, body, mind, and spirit in a friendly, curious, and non-judgmental way. This mindful consideration of where we are in the moment, this mindful awareness centers on the moment-to-moment experience of ourselves. So we want to know, what sensations are we feeling, what thoughts are we having, and what are our emotions are we feeling, and how do they bundle together to drive our behavior? We need to be aware of the whole range of human experience, including painful experience, with a particular attitude of acceptance. It is what it is. And as you do this, be kind to yourself. Self-kindness adds a deepening of the ability to be caring and understanding with ourselves, recognizing that we're all human. We have blessings and we have imperfections. And sometimes we have bad things happen to us. So first of all, be aware of yourself. And the awareness has to be present for you to have compassion for yourself and your situation. And the more compassion we offer ourselves, the safer we feel, and the more we're willing to become aware of ourselves. So it's kind of a self-reinforcing circle of compassion, compassionate self-awareness, and being able to look at ourselves in reality so that we can acknowledge what we want to be better. And then from there, we can go to how are we going to get it better. So when we're more aware of ourselves, it's really easier to strategize about how to meet our needs and start making changes that will support ourselves. Some simple questions to increase your awareness of yourself, moment to moment, can include things like, well, how am I feeling right now? What am I sensing in my body now? What thoughts am I having as I deal with this challenge? And once you are really taking a good look at yourself and holding yourself with compassion, you're in a good position to assess how you are doing in the various areas of your life. I mean, sometimes things get so jumbled up and there's so many thoughts and so many emotions that it's like a ball of tangled string. It just, we can't tell, where it starts and where it ends. It's just a tangle, and that's very hard to sort out and deal with. Now, in general, when people are working to clarify areas to work on to improve their health, they might take an inventory of the state of various areas of their life. Now, in health coaching, usually the areas that are looked at include things like food and nutrition. You look at the foods and fluids that make up your daily nutrition. And the manner in which you eat them. Do you eat on the run? Do you prepare whole foods with a rainbow of colors and sit and savor your meals? Those kind of things. They'll also look at the area of movement, exercise, and play, and how moving more might improve your health and thus improve your quality of life. They look at areas like daily rhythm and balance. How do you spend the majority of your time? Do your days and weeks include time for personal development? Do you carve out time to be able to eat in a healthy way and to move, to pursue creative, projects that you like to do, or to make social connections? You look at the environment around you. Is it organized and neat? And does it help you feel peaceful and rested? Or is it chaotic and just causes anxiety and discomfort? Are you getting sleep and rest? What are your relationships like with family and friends and your connections within your community? And then they'll also look at the area of mind-body connection, which is how our mind and our body and behavior interact. And then also the area of spirit and soul. These areas are a good foundation place for anybody to start to look at different areas of their lives and identify areas that may be going well or that are okay, or other areas that may be causing a lot of stress and a lot of impact negatively on their health. I think for caregivers, though, this kind of basic inventory of areas of our well-being should really expand to include additional areas of difficulty that often impact caregivers in profound ways, which I listed earlier. And these additional areas include the personal grief and loss. How are we doing with mourning? How are we dealing with disappointment? Another area is dealing with the psychological and behavioral challenges of the person we're caring for. And then there's the area of guilt and self-blame and being quite hard on oneself. There's the area of how we're doing managing emotions, and the area of whether there's clarity of your role as a caretaker and the family dynamics that are involved in establishing those roles. Another area is finances. And I think another area is also the decision making and leadership process, and whether how comfortable you are with that and whether you have the support you need for that. So once you have the mindset that you will lovingly care for yourself, take a look at the basic and the caregiver focused areas of life and how you are doing within each one of them. So just to reiterate, look at nutrition, movement and exercise, sleep and rest, mind-body connection, daily rhythm and balance, and your environment, your social connections and community belonging, and your spirit and soul. And then also take a look at personal grief and loss, handling psychological and behavioral challenges in your care recipient, guilt and self-blame, handling of emotions, having clarity of your role and comfortable family dynamics, managing finances and the impact of your finances on you, and your comfort with decision making and leadership. And again, the reason to look at each of these areas separately is to gain an understanding of how you are currently doing in each area, and then take a look at what you are hoping for, your desired state in each of these life areas. It helps to clarify where you are now and where you hope to be in the future. And then once you've done that self-inventory and done it with self-compassion and self-love, now you can get down to action. So you take, 3 steps to help you close the gap from where you are now to where you want to be. Kind of 3 things to do. The first is to narrow the focus. Now, what do I mean by that? Is just you look at each area, rate how you are doing on a 1 to 10 scale in each of the areas. Then consider what a 10 would look like. What's the best it could be for you? What do you really hope for? And then ask yourself, and this one's important, ask yourself, how ready am I to work on this area? Because there may be some areas where you think, I just can't take that on right now. And that's fine. If you feel like you don't want to take it on, just don't attempt to, because you're not likely to be successful with making any changes. So there may be some areas that you are ready to address, others that you do not want to take on at this time, and others that you feel are already going well. And then select 1 or 2 areas that you really want to work on. And we all know how hard it is to do things and make changes, even when they are probably going to be really helpful in helping us feel better. So one way to help ourselves be successful in getting to where we want to be is to work on our motivation, because our motivation helps us follow through and stick with it. So ask yourself questions such as, how would my life be different if this area was a 10 on the scale? What would be possible for me if I were to make changes in this area? How would improvements in this area benefit me? And how would improvements in this area of my life benefit my loved one that I'm caring for? And then think about your own personal strengths and experiences that you could draw on to improve this area. Have you been successful in the past in handling similar situations or difficulties? What do you already know you could do to make this better? And what supports do you already have or could get that you could lean on? Then the second kind of step in this is to create longer term goals, like 3 to 6 months goals. And these goals should be based on the behaviors you will be doing, not on how someone else is behaving, feeling, or achieving, but on behaviors you'll be doing in 3 to 6 months to get to where you want to be. Then you set action steps on how to get there. I think of the little action steps as like the stair steps going up a flight of stairs. Your 3 to 6 months goals are at the top of the stairway, but you don't get to the top of the stairway by taking one giant step. You take a lot of little steps that are very achievable, and step after step, you will get to the top. So that's how it is with setting action steps. They're like your little steps or your stepping stones to reaching your goals. They should be teeny tiny things that you will do over the for a week or two to get you closer to where you want to be. And when you get those going, then you add the next steps that will get you closer. And they should be steps that you are really confident you can successfully achieve. Now, if you are having trouble with figuring out what to do or how to stick to it, get help. Health coaches are skilled in helping people draw on their own strengths to work on making life and behavioral changes that will really have a very positive effect on how you feel, on your health, and your well-being. If you're having trouble with severe burnout, depression, high anxiety, or problems that just seem too big to handle on your own, seek out help from a mental health provider or ask your primary care provider for suggestions on where to get skilled help. There is no shame in getting support. I think of it as being strong and making a powerful move to help yourself feel better and be healthier. And that in turn will protect you from or help you heal from burnout, compassion fatigue, and stress-related health problems. And, it's so importantly, it will help you be the caregiver of your dreams. You will feel so much better about yourself. You will feel more confident, have more self-efficacy, and then the trials and the vicissitudes of caregiving will have less negative effect on you. It will help you toward your best outcome, which is to find new strength, confidence, and pride and virtue in your caregiving, rather than losing your health and sanity while you're caregiving. Whew, well, we have covered a lot today. I know it's a lot to take in, especially the last part about how to deal with the difficult challenges that caregiving may bring, and the really complex constellation of groupings of difficulties that get all tangled up. That's why it's important to have a system, a framework to use to tease out exactly what challenges are at play in your own life. Treat yourself with great compassion, and then address the areas in your life that you want to improve and that you're ready to work on. Set goals of how you want to be functioning in those areas in 3 to 6 months. Then start taking consistent little baby steps each week to get you closer to your goals. Your goals should be about you and what you can be, what you can control in yourself, and your own action steps should also be things you can really do. Just remember that your goals or your action steps are not things other people are supposed to be feeling or doing, because that's really out of your control. Have these be things that are within your own domain of power, your own actions. And if you have trouble putting a plan into action, get some help with it from a health coach or other health professional. So you're worth it. You deserve care and compassion as much as anyone else, maybe more so because you're giving away so much of yourself. I respect you, and I want the best possible life for you and your loved one, and I hope this podcast is helpful to you. If you would like to work with me individually, you can contact me at scissortailhealthcoaching.com or at cba@scissortailhealthcoaching.com. I would love to hear from you if there are any topics that you would like for me to address on the podcast. I'd be very open to your ideas about that. Until next time, this is Dr. Corabelle Arts. Take care.